Most of the time I get asked to do commissions for bridal showers and baby showers and weddings, but I've always felt like there are so many missed opportunities when it comes to lettering for men's parties. The theme is going to be for a bachelor party, and we are going to use old chalkboards and lettering from butcher shops as the inspiration for this YouTube tutorial. For this tutorial, we are going to walk through the creation of the main welcome sign that marks the occasion. So the first thing I do, I have a sketch ready, and I would frame my board as I always do. Sometimes you own these boards, which is great. Then you're not that worried about damage, but if you're working on something that might be a rental, it's just better to test it in an area so you don't ruin something that might be vintage. So it's just good to know what you're putting onto your surfaces and how to remove them, just in case. So essentially, I've already framed my artwork, so I know that Butchers and Bachelors should be somewhere in the middle here, and then there will be a meet and greet at the bottom, and then a Ben & Co on top. So right now, I'm just gonna section off the 3 sections of lettering that I'm gonna do. Meet and greet is obviously the smallest element of the lettering, so I'm gonna kind of do that first, and then leave as much area as possible for the larger lettering. So I always have different size widths of tape, depending on what I'm doing. And at this point, when I've laid this down, that's when I would kind of just give a quick measure to see if you're generally the same. I'll see this side is a little bit higher than that side, so maybe I just adjust myself a little bit. Okay, here we go. 13, that's good. I eyeball a lot of stuff. If you're not comfortable doing that, just take your pencil and you can actually measure first and then put the tape on. So I've taped up my board, which is basically mapping out my sketch here like this. So I'm gonna be starting to draw lines and my type, essentially. This is the Bohin France. It's a mechanical chalk pencil. I like using this mechanical chalk pencil because, first of all, I don't need to get my hands dirty, and you get a really fine point from using the Bohin. And it's refillable, and it just makes lettering so much quicker and so much faster. I wouldn't worry too much about, this is me still sketching at the moment, and that's okay because we can actually use an eraser to erase our sketch marks in the end. So for the lettering side of things, I always emphasize that the heights should be the same, and then the spacing in between each letter should be the same. And if you do that, generally you will get a pretty good balance, and it would look pretty uniform. So for Ben & Co, B is the first letter, and then the little dot and the O is the ending. So I would kind of start with the B and then do the O, and then kind of fill in the letters in between. So essentially, I've drawn out all the spaces where all the lettering is going to go. So each space, each rectangle is considered a letter. So this would be B-E-N, the ampersand, C-O. So the word ends here, so there's a little bit more space in between the words as opposed to the spacing between the letters. So now when I fill in my text, or when I draw my letters, I know that the bottom of the letter is going to hit this arch here, and the top of the letter is going to hit here. When I'm drawing type forms, I feel like it's really important to give yourself a little box. Most of the letters are the same width. Only W's and M's are usually a little bit wider, and obviously the I's are a little bit skinnier. But all the other letters should generally be the same width and height, and that's what makes it look cohesive. My aim is never to do anything perfect. It's just more, create a more uniform look. Keep in mind, the strokes that you're creating all should be about the same width as well. For example, I'll show you what I mean. If you're creating this block here, that's 2 centimeters, you try to create all the blocks throughout the lettering at 2 centimeters to try to keep it the same weight. If you're wondering how I choose my fonts, usually I have a catalog in my mind already, but I do have so many books that I have that give me a lot of like inspiration, lettering books. So like so many different types of fonts, and like some of them like speak more to me than others. Like this one is like Butchers and Bachelors, so I feel like I chose more heavier fonts, such as this one. So yeah, it's always good to have like a catalog or like books about lettering that you like, or if you see something on the street that lettering that you like, just take a photo, right? So you can save it in your personal catalog. So the beautiful thing about the Bohin France is like there's no sharpening really. It's just continuous work. So originally this pencil is meant for seamstresses, but I use it for lettering. So that's my sketch for that. Now I'm gonna be heading into this more like a painter's brushstroke for the Butchers and Bachelors. Okay, I'm gonna move this up a little bit. I like working on an easel for my big signs because I can raise and lower. This is just me laying out my lettering to make sure everything fits. So for the meet and greet, it's also a block type font. So in that case, it's easier to create blocks again when you're creating the lettering for the meet and greet. As I mentioned, M's are a little bit wider, so I'm going to start off with a wider rectangle. I'm going to use my finger as like the spacing. So for the meet and greet, I'm creating a more of a serif font. So as you can see, I just drew the M first, but with the serifs, I kind of add those at the end. So I'm just filling in my lines and creating the serifs. So let's just say I'm doing the E right now. So I'm going to create the E. And the serifs are kind of just like little details that I add to create a character for the font, for the letter. So keep in mind this is all just me sketching. I'm going to go in with a more permanent tool. So that is basically the layout, roughly the skeleton of my sign at the moment for the lettering. Now I'm going to go in with detailing and also I'm going to pull out the tape because I generally have the right angles for the Butchers and Bachelors, and I'm going to fill in the strokes now. I think that's good. So at this point, I'll remove the tape and I'm going to go in with my more permanent medium for chalkboards, which is my Stabilo All. So with the Bohin France, it's more of a chalky feeling, so there is potential for smudging, but with this one, it is also still a water-soluble pencil, but it doesn't smudge at all. So that's why I use the Bohin France for sketching, and then I go in with the Stabilo All. So then afterwards, I can actually erase all my sketch marks with my eraser. The only way that the Stabilo All would kind of budge is if I put water on it. So the good thing with the Stabilo All is that you can also sharpen it. It looks like chalk, but it's not chalk. It's not messy, and you can get really good points with the pencil as well, which is great, because with chalk you have to almost sharpen it with a blade, but it's still very dusty. At this point I can show you, I can kind of erase all my sketches for the B. And all that's left is the lettering itself. I always like to use a black eraser when I'm working on chalkboards, only because you don't see any residue, because when you're like rubbing everything off, the rubber is also black. I always do sketches like this on graph paper first, but if I was working on chalkboards, I kind of want to see what it would look like on chalk, because sometimes you're doing something that's reverse, right? So that's why I always kind of like prefer to sketch on the color that is like the final board as well. If I want to add detailing into the block letters, which I'm gonna do, I kind of like just sketch out one letter. I think we're gonna go with this one. So this one, see, you can touch it. Still looks like chalk, but doesn't come off at all. So I'm just using my bowing France again, just because the lead is so fine, it's easier to create this look. So I'm gonna kind of take off the tape and then I might do a little bit of more detailing. But basically, essentially it's done. And I'll probably put a shadow behind these guys. Well, it's done now, so like, I don't know. Okay, I'll be like, ta-da! I don't know. Thank you for watching my first YouTube video. As I wrapped up writing my book last year for Extraordinary Hand Lettering, I realized that I still had so many ideas to share and so many more typefaces and surfaces I wanted to actually letter on. Just subscribe if you want to keep up with me and my lettering lifestyle. I don't know what's going to happen. Just follow along. Let's see where this journey takes us.